So my name is Ali Aminu Ahmed. I'm here to present to you participatory approaches in program evaluation. Specifically, we are going to look at focus group discussion and then key informant interviews, sometimes called in-depth interviews. So these are the things that we usually encounter during researches. So let's see, as a background, generally how you acquire knowledge is in different forms. You can talk to someone with experience on something and he will tell you about it, but because the person is an expert or has experience on that thing, then you will take it. Sometimes somebody will be an authority in a field, and then that person has experience in that field, and then once he says something, you believe it. For example, a pastor preach it, so you believe whatever because they are experts and authorities in that area. Then there is also intuition. Just on your own, you feel like this information is good, and then you think you are feeling that this information is good, or your body is telling you, and then you say, okay, that is also something that you can use. There may be beliefs or traditions handed down from generation to generation, and you say, okay, maybe you overheard somewhere, small scale industries don't survive until they are sure to exceed 5 years, and then all those beliefs, then you take it. So, but all these things may not necessarily be the reality, I mean the truth. You want to get the truth and objective, factual information. I think the best approach is for you to go and conduct research and then use research methods to arrive at something. Either you disprove what you already know, or you reinforce what you already know. So usually researches are important to find a facts or to get information for decision making, or to get certain knowledge about something. You know, the construct is data. Now, when you process data, you get information. When you process information, you have knowledge of something. So, example, a bag of rice is 10,000 naira. So that is just data on a bag of rice. Then when somebody tells you that a bag of rice now has increased to 30,000 naira, that is information to you because it has moved from that data. You have processed it and say it has increased to certain, but still it's not knowledge, because somebody will now relate and say, if a bag of rice is 30,000 naira now that it is August, then possibly by September, October, it will increase to 32, because in the past, that is how it is. Every time the price increase in September, it would increase in October, and so on. Somebody say, well, based on information, I think based on my knowledge in the past and compare what is happening in the future, in the present, I will say that by December, prices of goods are going to come down. So those kind of things are called knowledge because it's processed information. So now this data or research you do, basically you are trying to solve a problem. You are trying to understand situations. So when you are doing that, most of the time, you don't say what you think, rather what the data shows you or what the data tells you. So it can be disproving your intuition, disproving your maybe authoritative position or whatever, because what the data shows may not necessarily be what you already maybe heard somewhere from somebody with experience or something. So with that, you'll be able to understand the real situation. So for you to understand the real situation, you have to set aside your own beliefs. You have to set aside your own biases. You have to be impartial. But most of all, you have to also be curious. You have to dig deeper, probe deeper, understand. Then you are able to get some valid data that you can process into information and then get knowledge about the subject you are interested in. So, but this kind of data you collect may come from different approaches. So basically there are two research approaches. I'm not discussing research methodology here. I'm rather trying to just put it in context. So the approaches can be a quantitative approach or qualitative approach. So the quantitative approach usually is what we call a positivistic. That is something that is having a single reality. That is, if you say there are 20 people in this room, so it means that it is countable, factual, specific, measurable to that particular thing you want to see. So it is something that is really, you can count, it's single. It is 20, anywhere you go in the world, when they measure it is 20. But in terms of qualitative, it is usually subjective. It has multiple realities. What I mean by that is, if you ask within this Zoom meeting now, you ask, what is your opinion about scheduling this meeting? So some people will have different perceptions, say, I'm not interested in this time because of this and that. So you have varied opinions. So it's subjective. It depends on who is answering it. Then it seeks to understand and sometimes produces a theory that is grounded on what you are actually seeing. So, but sometimes in the case of positivistic approach, usually they have large sets of data and they see a pattern. They say this is normally distributed. And then when you come, you just say, okay, you do your research and then compare. For example, if student pass rates anywhere in the world, you say it's normally distributed. You have fewer excellent, fewer poor, but majority are in between C and so on. So it's something that has a theory around them. So these are the two approaches. So incidentally, our own approach for this particular research that we are doing is a mixed method approach. So we are using both quantitative and qualitative. So that's why we conducted a survey and multiple surveys, and then we also conducting discussions and multiple discussions. So it's a very complex kind of research. It is called mixed method approach to research. So I'm showing you this just in a nutshell. I'm not really delving deeper. I just want to give you an idea of where we place this particular study that we are doing. So it's a mixed method approach. If you look at where my mouse is hovering, you see that mixed method approach is in the middle. It is not necessarily a single reality like a positivistic approach, or it's not necessarily multiple. It's a mix of both. So it's like an action research. And then also, if you look at a cross-sectional and longitudinal technique, this one is saying that, okay, longitudinal is you observe is a particular respondent over a long period of time. That is longitudinal. Cross-sectional is you just go and do the study and come back. This method is in between. So what we are doing is actually a mixed method approach. So without boring you much on the research onion. So we are now going to discuss actually the data collection that we are going to do. So everything, whether it is mixed method, mono method, or multi method, actually the most important thing is the data collection that we are going to do. So now I'll explain the data collection for the qualitative aspect of this study, the way questionnaire we administered on the Kobo toolbox. So I'm going to explain the qualitative data collection to you and then prepare us for the field. So basically, my objective is to see that we learn about focus group discussions, we learn about key informant interviews. I know that you may have experience in conducting discussions with people. We have had some discussion on Zoom. So this is just like to reinforce the already existing knowledge. So I will say that the mixed method approach seek to integrate both the quantitative as well as the qualitative approaches that we use to collect data within this study that we are conducting. So what is the advantage of having a mixed method approach? The advantage is that we are going to triangulate our findings. That's why when we ask for MSMEs to fill out our questionnaire online, PFIs to fill out our questionnaire online, and DBN to fill out the questionnaire, we are trying to get some data from them. But when we go out now, we are going to discuss and probe deeper to understand more, to triangulate the information provided to us so that we will reinforce those findings. And then using one method may give us only one aspect, that is a single reality or multiple reality, without actually reinforcing each other. So it is good to complement the findings through these wider methods. So I will start with the qualitative aspect, which is the focus group discussions. Why? When you go to the field, usually people do not limit you to discussing with one person. You go to an entrepreneur, he will now say, let my staff join us in the discussion because they have information on this, information on that. So you may be lucky to have maybe one person to discuss with, but most of the time you have more than one person to discuss with when you visit a place. So when you are having more than one person, usually maybe 4, 5, whatever, you can adapt the focus group approach. Although standard is like 6 people is better, but from 6 to 12 or even less than that is okay, because you just want to get information from the respondents. So let's start with the focus group discussion. So it's a special type of discussion or interview that is structured to gather detailed opinions, knowledge, attitudes, behaviors, practices, and so on about the participants you have selected. So when should you use that focus group approach? I think from the beginning, we have already decided to use a mixed method approach. So we are doing focus group discussion to have an in-depth understanding of issues around MSMEs across the country. So, and we know that survey method alone cannot give us all the things we need, because no matter how lengthy your survey method is, you realize that there are certain salient things that you may miss in that survey method. So you are forcing people to answer either yes or no, but to answer how, why, all those questions may require you to probe deeper with a focus group. So when you want to know more and then want more information beyond the survey data, then it is good to discuss with the respondents. So generally, FGD involves gathering people from similar backgrounds or homogeneous groups. The homogeneous, because you have to be conscious that if you are doing a focus group discussion, you don't put people that are of different, maybe status or whatever. Try to have people that can talk freely. So when you go to a community, you cannot say that you want to discuss with the chief as well as an ordinary person on the street within the community and expect that you have a good discussion. If you put chiefs together, you have better discussion. If you put local people together, you have better discussion. If you put women and girls together and you want to discuss maybe issues to do with reproductive health, you realize that girls don't want to open up, as well the women. So, but if it's women alone, they can talk to each other. If you do girls, they can talk to each other. So in our situation, depending on how we find the field, it will be nice if you have laborers, discuss with them separately. If you have the officials in the organization, like the management, discuss with them separately. So it depends on how we find the situation. So the benefit of conducting FGDs is that it reveals more information than the surveys that we have already conducted. It also provides us with an organized method of collecting data from the respondents. And it is very quick and effective way to freely discuss. People like to talk, like to discuss than only filling forms. And it will provide us with qualitative data to understand in-depth or probe deeper on the context, on issues, on behaviors, on knowledge, or whatever about the respondents. So everybody has a chance to express their opinion during focus group discussion. So how long does it take? Well, it depends on how you structure it, but you should know that you are dealing with people. So some people don't have much time to discuss with you, so you may limit your meeting to 45 minutes or 60 minutes. But if you have the luxury, you can go up to 90 minutes, it's okay. But beyond that, sometimes it's really hard for you to keep people for over 2 hours. It's very hard. But it depends on your experience and tactics. As you are discussing, you may like to stagger it to up to 90 minutes. It's okay, no problem. So, but most importantly, try to be sure that you are in an environment where people are comfortable and relaxed to talk, and then you are sure that everybody expresses their opinions freely. So as I said earlier, the typical number usually is 6 to 8 or sometimes up to 12, but sometimes you can be as low as 5 people is okay. So the participants to attend are usually pre-selected. You select them, you inform them, you schedule with them, and they come and discuss with you, okay? And the aim is to pick up very few topics, very few issues, then discuss them. But you are not there to agree or disagree or have a consensus on something. Let everybody have their opinions. We have varied opinions. You can document all those opinions. You understand? So if an opinion is contradicting other opinions, do not discard any opinion. Just tell them every opinion is good. But don't forget, you that is interviewing is supposed to be neutral. You don't have to have an opinion. So even something is wrong, you know definitely is wrong, it is a perception about that issue by the participant. It's not you to correct anybody. Whatever you hear is correct, whether it is not conforming to actual thing that you know. So in conducting FGDs, you need to agree ahead of time with the participants. Maybe a week before the meeting, actual FGD, you inform them, send them invitations, get their phone number, call them, remind them, set up your venue. It is something that is not like you just go and meet people and say, well, let's discuss. You have to prepare ahead and then get necessary permissions, whatever, clearance, get everything ready before you go there so that you will not have to be struggling for space, location, and so on. So in terms of ethical consideration, as I said, approvals may be needed. I know in Nigeria, there are states that require ethical approval before you do any research, like Jigawa State and so on. So there are other states that doesn't care, but you have to check so that you will not be embarrassed when you go to the field and somebody tells you that you are not supposed to do research in this state without approval. Then before you start the discussion, you have to be sure that people either sign or give an agreement of the informed consent. So there's usually a form that you have to read through, and then people can give you verbal or signed agreement, but signed one will be better, so that if there is anything, you have evidence to show that the person has agreed, and then to agree to take pictures, agree to all those things, you need to have it ready. So, but you need to assure the participants that whatever they are saying is confidential and kept only for your notes, and nothing, you cannot disclose any personal identity in your reports and so on. And then they are also going to need to be assured that if they like, they can walk out of the discussion, no problem. If they like, they can skip some questions until you just skip, no problem. So it's not like, hello?
Please, can I ask a question?
You can ask questions. Maybe give me like a few minutes, then
Okay.
we have questions before we go to the next topic.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, is that okay by you? Is that okay?
Yes, it's okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
so,
That's fine. I think it's more structured that way. Yeah.
yes. So you need to assure them of their privacy. They are free to leave, and they are free to maybe skip questions and so on. So there are a lot of question mark in terms of what do you give participants that will not mean that you are inducing them to say what you want to say, what you want them to say. Do you give them money? Do you give them food? Do you give them gifts? Generally, I think if people come to your event, to your FGD, at least reimburse them their transportation for coming. But if you go to their premises, then you don't have to reimburse them for transportation. Rather, maybe you can buy some snacks to them, or you can give them a notebook from your own organization, or a pen or something. Just, it's customary here in Africa, so we need to be mindful of that aspect of discussion. But don't give them too much thing that tomorrow again when you come, it will be difficult to do your FGD. Before you start your focus group discussion, I think the most important thing is that you should have printed your informed consent script. form for consent form, you read through it, they agree, they sign. Then encourage them to ask for clarification of questions. Reason is that maybe you designed these questions and you pre-tested them, they were okay. But when you come in actual sense of it, we are discussing with them, maybe they will not understand, maybe the way you speak, your accent, your explanation. So let them ask you clearly what questions that are ambiguous so that you can explain to them. Then you now ask for verbal permission to proceed with the interview after the informed consent has been signed. That is to be sure that people are ready. And sitting arrangement is very important. Make sure that all of you are either, if you are on carpet, you all sit down on the carpet. If you are on chair, all of you sit down on the chair. Your eye contact should be at level like 90 degrees. Everybody should see everyone's eye, the same eye contact, so that you can discuss freely without superiority. You are on a chair, they are on the ground, or they are on the ground, or you have to be equal. Then in terms of taking notes, sometimes it's difficult for you to take notes verbatim immediately. So you need to ask for permission to record the notes for the sole purpose of transcribing it later. If they give you permission, you use your recorder. If they don't, forget about it. And then what you need to do is you need to ask question in a systematic way. What I mean by systematic way is that you have a question guide. That is what the people sometimes call questionnaire. In this case, is a question guide. A questionnaire is for the survey, but for focus group discussion, is a guide. It doesn't. You don't have to follow. Question 1 says this. Question 2 says that. No, you just. In fact, if you can understand the question guide very well, you don't have to even open it. So you know exactly the kind of information I'm looking for. So have at the back of your mind, these are the number of questions, or these are the issues that I want to cover. So now when you are discussing those questions, something else may come up. Then you probe deeper, you ask them another question. So those questions on your question guide are only to help you focus your discussion, but doesn't mean that you cannot ask new questions or extra questions or probe questions as the discussion flows. Let's make sure that it's natural. It flows naturally, the discussion. So you can really benefit more from that approach. So now I will tell you FGD, even though it sounds simple, there are many things going on before you successfully implement your FGD. So, and these are the 5 key roles expected to deliver very good FGD. You need to have a financier for the FGD, or sponsor, or the donor, or the person that is responsible for providing resources. Then you also need to have a good facilitator. You need to have a good note taker. Then you now have someone that will summarize everything, and then a team leader. I'm going to explain the role of each, so that if we are doing that, we should know what and what we should not miss, and so on. So in terms of financier, usually is the client who endorses that we should go ahead with the approach, and then he provides, or the client provides money for that work. So what is the money going to be used for? The person facilitating his or her fees, costs associated with maybe transportation to the place or location for the interview. Then maybe you need to also be careful, because sometimes you may assume that when you go to do FGD, you go to a premises of the respondent, and don't be surprised that the premise may not be convenient for you, either noise or maybe whatever it is, distance, safety concerns, and so on. So you need to be very, very careful. Then in terms of refreshment I've mentioned, you need to also budget for that. Equipment, some people need to have maybe small midgets recorders. You need to budget for phone calls, you need to budget for printing and several other things. So you need to be mindful not to miss out everything. So usually you can have a checklist of the things that you need to have so that as you are planning for your FGD, you tick them off. And then sometimes even the per diem of people that are going to the field and all this need to be factored in so that people don't get stranded. Now, facilitator. This is very critical. It can make or mar your focus group discussion. The person has to have experience in facilitation, group dynamics, in understanding the subject, in patience to ask questions. So he facilitates all the process of the focus group discussion. For each discussion, the person must be present there. If you want to do 3 FGDs in a day, that facilitator should be available in all the 3. Then you need to determine the agenda for those sessions. When are you going to do, so that you leave a gap, like maybe 1 or 2 hours. Don't do back-to-back discussion. It's very difficult. You usually don't have luxury to finish your recording if it is a Zoom meeting and then you enter another one, you miss opportunity. But you give like 2 hours, you finish your recording, you tidy up your notes, you take critical points before you move to the next. But if you don't do that, you'll miss out completely in the process. So give yourself 2 hours between FGDs. It's not the quantity, it's the quality of the discussion and the quality of the recording and the quality of the documentation or not taking that matters most. But if you just haphazardly do 5, 3 per day, all those is really going to be difficult. So then the person should have very effective moderating techniques. Moderating techniques is really a difficult thing because you as a facilitator, you don't have to talk too much. You don't have to, you ask question, somebody answers you, and then you ask another person question, the person answers you, and you answer him back. No, you are just there to encourage people to speak among themselves. So when you ask a question, even through the body language, you see that you allow people to freely talk and discuss among themselves. It will be wonderful. Your voice should be heard less. So allow people to brainstorm, discuss, but you facilitate to make sure that everybody is participating. Now, your role is to encourage, as a facilitator, is to encourage discussion between participants. You need to seek a variety of opinions, experiences, people that are very silent, try to help them to talk, use positive body language, keep the discussion focused on the topic, then ensure that sufficient information is obtained for a particular topic or particular question before you move to the next. But don't allow it to drag too long, but don't make it so sharp, snappy like that. So invite opinions from different participants, but at the back of your mind, you have to be mindful of the timing and the pace of the discussion so that you'll be able to cover all the topics of interest. You have to have certain skills. One, you have to be somebody that is an agile thinker. Rapidly, you should pick up something and then know what to ask next, know how to motivate the people within this few minutes that we are discussing. Then you need to be organized. You also need to be active in listening. Active listening means that you show somebody are keenly interested in what they are saying. Don't be distracted. Be focused during that 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour or thereabout. So you cannot be a good facilitator unless you keep practicing. Practice is the answer. There is no experience comes with continuous practice. So active listening means that you have to like look at the person eyeball to eyeball. You need to maybe sometimes say, okay, you nod your head, and okay, just to make sure that the person participates. That feedback to encourage someone to discuss, and then don't show the person their opinion is wrong, and so on. So that is active listening. So you need to manage the discussion without disrupting the momentum of the conversation. And the best FGD is people will forget that they are in a formal setting. They should just be relaxed and be talking. So here are some things that you need to note, that non-verbal things that you need to note. So those non-verbal things help you to maintain enthusiasm throughout the discussion. For example, facial expressions, body language, gestures, all these help you to even the tone of voice of someone helps you to know whether they are interested or confused or in disagreement with you. So, for example, somebody frowns or nod their head, you know definitely that person is in disagreement. But it's not in every culture. Some culture, when they nod their head, let's say in India, when they nod their head, they are in agreement. So try to understand a culture, and then try to understand when somebody is saying no or when somebody is saying yes. If somebody leans backwards from a conversation, that may likely be that the person is bored. If somebody leans forward, maybe the person is more interested and maybe more attentive, and that's why they are leaning forward. They want to know more. So you have to be mindful of body languages so that you don't make your conversation too academic, too boring, or people don't participate, because their aim is to make sure that they freely discuss with you. So regarding note taking, this is where many researchers or many people that are interested in qualitative research fail taking notes. You will be so engrossed in the conversation, so curious to know more, you forget to capture anything. And then at the end of the day, you realize that when it comes to submitting notes, you have very scanty notes, maybe only some few jots. So what you need to do, you take notes as a note taker during the conversation. Don't allow to say, well, after I will know. You may not recall everything. So take notes as much as you can. Immediately you finish the discussion, go back and write more notes, so that the 2 hours provided to you before the next focus group discussion, you'll be able to remember all the key points. And your style of writing matters a lot. You can write in maybe shorthand, whatever, depending on how you are able to remember. But there are people that when they write, they forget what they have written. So if you know that they are the kind of person, it's better for you to write in full. Then in terms of acronyms, you need to note the acronyms carefully without interrupting the conversation. Then later you find what do they mean. So really, the best approach is to seek for audio recording. When they give you permission, record it. When they don't give you permission, don't say that you are over smart and then you are going to now secretly record from your phone. It's unethical. It's not good. People have reasons why they don't want to record their conversation. So try your best to be as accurate and as verbatim as possible in writing your notes. And then also try to be as detailed, because sometimes people take notes and submit maybe 5 lines, 10 lines, and that's all. And the essence is not to carry out the process. No, the essence is to get information that will be analyzable. And when you don't have much writing, you will not be able to quote and say that these are the things that people are saying. Then all the information is lost. And then when during analysis, you realize that almost everything that you have done is useless. You have just done the process, but you are unable to get the data, because every statement, every pause, everything that the person does or says within that conversation is important data for you, is qualitative data. Video recording, honestly, I don't encourage that. The reason is that people tend to be more conscious when they are video recorded. So don't do video recording unless necessary, but don't do it, because it is really, it doesn't really go well with people to be recorded unless maybe they are in a situation where they have to record. But video recording is not necessarily good. So now transcriber is somebody who now gets all the notes, summarize the notes, and write the report. This is where the work is. The work for transcribing, for example, you now listen to the notes recorded. You now verbatim write it out. For each 1 hour of discussion, expect that you will spend like 3 hours to listen over and write down. So this is very, very critical. You have to be very, very careful in that aspect. Although there are softwares now people can use, but really, still there is a lot of work there. Then writing FGD report is very difficult. So it goes with experience, but we are not discussing how to write FGD report. Rather, we are discussing how to go to the field and collect the data. So the team leader, now the team leader, imagine the person that is managing the entire research as a team leader. So he manages the entire process from beginning to finishing. And then when the report comes, he also or she determines also how the report will be disseminated. And then there are many ways to give feedback to the stakeholders that participated in the process, because you don't just do a discussion. You also need to go back and give them feedback and say, this is what our report highlighted, and this and that is very important also. So now, what are you to avoid? Please avoid criticizing participant comments. In fact, you are not supposed to talk too much. In fact, set the rule from the beginning that you are the one to ask them questions. Until you finish, then they ask you questions. It's better that way. Because if you allow people to ask you questions, it will be very rowdy, and then the conversation will not finish within the period you are interested in. So don't allow people to ask you questions and then don't make comments or criticize their comments. Stay focused on issues, not from issues. So the issues of interest, you should stay focused on them. Don't deviate, don't divert too much. Do not assume meanings of any statement. Just take the statements as they are, and then if you don't understand, after the conversation, seek for clarification, or even during the conversation, if you really feel that you can ask, you can probe and say, okay, could you give me an example or something like that? Do not ignore people that don't want to talk. encourage them to talk. Because when you are discussing with people tend to, some few people tend to dominate the conversation. So, and then don't bring your opinion into the study. Try your best to focus on the topic. In asking questions, it is also a style that you start by asking simple questions to create rapport. And then you now ask easy questions. Then questions that expect them to disclose things should come much later, because people initially do not feel free to share with you some certain information until they are relaxed. But be attentive, do eye contact, and then make sure you don't forget taking your notes. So, and then in taking notes for each question, you need to number the question so that you don't forget. Question number one, you number number one, you know what you are referring to, and then you write your notes there. And then for the respondents that are answering the questions, you know the respondents are going to sit in a semicircle. So you need to now say, okay, respondent 1, 2, then put R1, R2, R, and so on. So those answers, when somebody is answering R1, you know who is answering that particular question. When you are writing a report, it will be easier. But try to quote verbatim some statements that are very powerful and interesting. Quote it exactly as it is, because it is a very good information. So make sure that no one dominates. Make sure that the conversation is free flow. Now that you have successfully concluded your questions, happily everybody's participating, ending the interview is important. You need to thank them. You need to also ask them maybe final question, 1 or 2. Maybe ask them general opinion about something, what worked well, what did not work well, what can we do differently, these basic things. It will help you get more information from them than even the structured interviews questions. And then when you finish, don't be in a hurry to pack and go. Some participants may want to talk to you privately, and this is also a valid. You can just take up their concerns and also note it as a note after the interview. So this is a sample informed consent. We just I used it somewhere, but we have a similar thing in your field guide. So the field guide contains everything that you need when you are on the field. It explains everything about the study. So I'll quickly give you a background on the key informant interviews, which is similar to the FGD. But in this situation, you are only sitting with one person, not a group. So most likely, the entrepreneur or the owner of the business may want to call you to his office, and then you discuss with the person alone. So you have the same methodology, but now you are dealing with only one individual. So what you do in the key informant interview, sometimes they refer to them as in-depth interview, is that you'll be sure that the conversation resembles the conversation you have with your acquaintances or your friends. So make it free flow, you laugh, you joke, you just make sure that it is very friendly, okay? Then the questions you ask, you know, you have your question guide, but these are the lead questions. But other questions that you can have the ability to frame questions quickly based on the responses of the person. So it should be very free discussion, and then more probing and inquire more and so on. So there are 5 key steps in organizing key informant interviews. First is the question development. Already we have our questions developed. So, and then second preparation for the interview. And then third, selecting the key informants. And then fourth, conducting the interview and then taking notes and then analyzing the data. So you see, it's similar to FGD. The only few details there are you are dealing with one individual, okay? So KIIs or key informant interviews or in-depth interviews are important and appropriate when you require a lot of data to triangulate with your quantitative data, just like the FGDs. And it helps you understand the motivation, the behavior, the knowledge, the attitude of the key informant. Don't forget, this is a key informant. So whatever the person gives you may be a representative of a representation of that kind of individual. If it is like students, whatever the student that tells you about, maybe a head boy in the school tells you, that is maybe a fair understanding of what is a typical student is in that school. So if you have an issue, you want to probe deeper, then you will use a single representative, single individual to talk to, and that person will explain further. Maybe in your survey, you check they are not paying their loans on time. There's a bit of delinquency here and there, but you don't know the reason why they are delinquent. So we want to do key informant interview to probe deeper and you know the reasons, okay? So the advantages of key informant interview is that you are discussing directly with the primary respondent, the key person. You are discussing with them directly. Then also gives you new ideas, new information beyond the survey information. And then usually it doesn't cost you much because it's just in 30, 45 minutes, 1 hour, you are done, and then you have a lot of information to analyze. But the disadvantage is that it's subjective. So you cannot quantify the data. Then also the person telling you may be biased. Maybe you have selection bias also, you select the wrong person. Maybe you try to avoid other this thing for other reasons. You select the ones that are not hanging fruit where you can go easily. So all these are biases anticipated. Even the interviewer may have bias. The way you frame question, the way you ask question, the way your body language shows, it will show to the person that is being interviewed that this is the answer that you want. It's not good. So you have to try your best to be very neutral. And then it's difficult to prove that, because you can ask somebody opinion, later the person have a different opinion. So it's not like something that is quantifiable, that if the person says it's 15, you come back and see every time is that 15. So now, in formulating the questions, if you look at the question guide given to you, we intend it to be both qualitative and quantitative. I mean, both FGD and KII informant interview. The quantitative aspect was the survey. So I was thinking that the person that you have selected must have filled the survey questionnaire, and then you now schedule a focus group discussion to get more in-depth information from what the person has filled. So you have quantitative information from the survey, and then you have qualitative to provide you more insights. That is the expectation, but I know it's not always so. So we can get, because the subjects that are responding to FGDs are very few, around the ones that we have selected are just like 50 or so. So whatever they say, maybe give us more light into the 500 and something survey questions that we have administered. So, but the most important thing, when you have a question, have other prop questions to explain more. Ask the person, what do you mean by this? And so on, so that you can get more details. Do not have a question that will say yes and no, and stop there. No. Try to frame your question to elicit explanation. Then short interview guide is very important, which we already have. The question should not be rigid, so that you don't say, I have asked this question and remain this question. I have asked this. No, no, no. Let the question only guide you, but you have other questions that you can ask based on the discussions you're having with the person. So you don't have to say, I have not asked this, but if you can cover the topics or the themes of interest, is wonderful. They don't have to be very strict on the questions. I have not answered question 1. I remember question 1, sir. Let's go back to question 1. No, it's not like that. So you have major topics listed. Make sure that you cover those topics, but the questions should be very flexible. So selecting key informants, we already have our key informants selected, but we should be careful to cover the regions of the country, the sectors of the MSMEs, the gender distribution, locations of all those things are factored in before we selected those 50. So, but make sure that there are major groupings. If it is trade, we have trade representation. If education, we have education representation, and so on. So for each category, we have someone to tell us about the category. So in conducting the key informant, just like the FGD, establish good rapport with the people before you start, explain the intended use of the information, assure them of confidentiality, be very relaxed in your discussion, then try your best not to say MSME, all those things. It's not everybody that knows all those acronyms. Try to, maybe your business, your company, or this is better than using these jargons that not everybody understands. So organize your questions. Start with basic, simple questions. Maybe ask them, how is business going on? How is the country? How are you coping with this COVID-19? All those things to make them relax. Then you now go deeper, then asking questions that are require a lot of information. So begin with the present situation. How is the business? And then go to the past. What happened in the past? Can you recall? Can you remember this? How was it? Then what are you planning for the future on this? So try to be mindful that you are looking at information that is retrospective, and then you are also looking at information that is futuristic. So avoid questions that can be answered with yes or no, and then maintain neutrality in your attitude, and then try your best to make your questions very easy to understand without much difficulty in translating or explaining some terms. Not taking the same situation. In this situation, you only have one person, so you are listening carefully, so it's easy to take the notes, unlike the FGDs. But try your best to record the conversation. Develop your own, what do you call it, summary notes immediately, maybe 1 or 2 pages. Then you go back and listen and do more. The more detailed your notes are, the better. I cannot overemphasize that. It's no point traveling, spending flights, spending hotel, and so on, and then come up with 3 pages of notes for an FGD. Try your best to have as rich as this, because all the expenses, time, money, and everything is on that note. So if you bring scanty 2-page notes, it's not really very nice. Try to have very detailed, so that when somebody is coding, I may share with you how codes are done. You'll see that it's not easy if you don't have information, because you cannot assume things. So analyzing the data is very, very critical if you don't have. So in summary, I would say that before you start your interviews, read the consent script to the participants, encourage the potential respondent to ask for clarification if something is not clear. and then either have a signed permission or verbal permission to start the interview. Ask if it will be acceptable to record the discussion. If they give you permission, record it, but you should test the recorder to be sure that that recorder is working. Then during the interview, please ask follow-up questions or prompt questions when appropriate, and encourage respondents to provide examples of things here and there is very important. Also remember that you need to encourage everybody to participate in either in the FGDs, and also encourage your respondent to participate in the key informal interview. Be careful to observe body language and so on. And then when you are ending the interview, thank the participants for their time. Answer any questions. Now you are ready to answer the questions. Whatever question they have, they can ask you because you have finished your interview. Then provide contact information, if necessary, if there are issues they want to maybe, and then give them assurance that you are going to give them feedback on the results of the discussions at the end of the day. So when you have your report, not necessarily every detail, but at least you have to give them feedback on the findings. Sometimes even what the findings is used for is very, very good. Try your best to give them feedback. So then say bye-bye. If you have some things to give them, maybe transport money, you can give them and so on. So that's it. And then you go and write your report. Thank you. Thank you very much.